Hey, I'm Kenneth Wajda. I'm a professional photographer here in Colorado. Welcome to another one of my Leica Talks, all things Leica. So today I want to talk about the Leica M3. So this is the legendary camera. This is the one that they made that really took off. 1954, they had been making the Barnack Leicas, and then this came out with this incredible viewfinder. 50 millimeter, almost life size. Nobody had ever seen a viewfinder so great. And to this day, it's still called one of the greatest viewfinders. So I have this with a 50 millimeter Summarit 50 millimeter 1.5. I bought this lens because I couldn't afford the Summilux 50 1.4. And this lens, people say, oh, it's not as good. Oh, they were competing with Contax, and they were trying to work with Zeiss, and they were trying to beat them, and Zeiss had the 50 1.4, so they were trying to come up with their own. It's good. Sally Mann talks about how she looks for older lenses that aren't perfect. She's not looking for perfection. She's looking for quality. This lens, I think, is known for being hard to find without front lens scratches, because a lot of the early Leicas had lens coatings that were kind of soft. I don't know about you, but I don't bump my lens glass into things very often. But if you do, you might want to put a filter on it. So this lens is in really good shape, and then I have a filter on it. And I have a cap. Everything is good to go. But the 51.5 is talked down on, and I don't agree. I like the 51.5. I like the fact that it has a focus tab. I like the fact that it has a little bit of a heft to it. It feels like, to me, it's a solidly built lens. I don't have an issue with the lens coating scratching, and I'm not rough on cameras to the point where, oh, it's going to be banged around with no lens cap on, no filter on. The Leica M3, definitely the most smooth system for shutter in advance. It's a camera that is, people really fetishize the camera for how elegantly made and how well it works. If you shoot and wind a Leica versus a Canon or any other brand, right away you can feel that there's something more elegant about this. It's still a box that holds film. It's still just a device to put a lens on and hold it in place for the film, but it's a really elegant device. It's that Porsche instead of the Chevy. And it's the Leica M3. This camera you cannot go wrong with. If you want to buy a camera, use it, you can always resell it. It's highly in demand. It will always be in demand because it's the legendary Leica. You don't see this camera at a bargain anywhere because this camera will always hold its value. I think you can find Leica M3s for $1,200, maybe $1,000, but you won't pay much more than that. But I think that at the same time, if any money you put into it, you can get it all back. The cameras hold their value. They're super well made. They have lugs so you can actually put a camera strap on it. That was a nice feature. And again, you're talking about a camera that has such a great viewfinder. I'm left-eyed, so I can't use it like you may be able to, but I can put a diopter on it, and then I can use it without my glasses, and I can see perfectly. With my glasses, I don't see the whole frame. I'm always, at a disadvantage being a glasses wearer and being left-eyed. But when you're right-eyed, it's a really great thing because you can keep that eye open. You can watch things enter the frame. That's really where Leica shines. And I can do it vertically because without my glasses, I can keep this eye open. In fact, I remember many a time shooting pro sports or shooting college soccer. I think I learned my lesson one time. I was shooting college soccer and I had a camera with a long lens, so it wasn't a Leica, It was probably a Nikon with a 300 millimeter lens up to my eye on a monopod shooting from the sideline, and the line judge was running back down the sideline with the play. As I'm following the play, I'm not looking at the line judge, and his back runs right into my camera and jams the camera into my face. That was a good lesson in keeping your other eye open so you can watch out for the line judge coming down the line. But I like having the other eye open. If you've not tried that, try that. That's what the Leica does great, is you can be shooting and you can watch things enter and they come into your frame. That's a really big bonus for a rangefinder with a viewfinder as opposed to a SLR where you're looking through a tunnel. That's what a Leica does great. And the Leica M3 with that big bright, I think it's a 91% viewfinder. It's so big and bright, if you're looking at them, make sure that it's bright. Make sure it's not cloudy. Make sure that the rangefinder patch is bright, because you have to be able to see the rangefinder. Basically, these two windows are triangulating to your subject. You have to make sure you can see both images inside the viewfinder. The Leica M3 got rid of the two windows like the 3F had so that it combined it all in one, but you have to make sure you can see it. So when you're looking for it, if you find one that has a dim viewfinder or a dim rangefinder, that's a negotiation point. That's how you can get a bargain. If you find one that's missing some leatherette, if you see the bottom of that camera that's missing some leatherette, that's a bargaining chip. Do I like it without the leatherette there? Not really. It would be nicer if it didn't have that piece missing, but I'm not going to worry about it. Once I put the lens on, I don't really think about it or see it. It's down here. I buy these cameras to use them. And I use them all the time, and I use them up. Actually, you can't use them up because they never wear out. They never go away. But anything that you do to them, you can just use them and they will always work because they're such beautifully engineered bodies. And I find that if I had to recommend a person who likes a 50 millimeter lens, because it doesn't have frame lines for 35, it has frame lines for 50, 90, and 135. If you're a telephoto person, I have a good friend who's much more of a telephoto person than my wide angle leanings. He really works well with an M3 because of the 50, 90, and the 135. I use this typically with a 50 and a 90 because those are the two lenses that I think work great with this. And I'll use an M2 for a 35, which is why they came out with the M2. But if you want a great viewfinder, if you want a camera that is absolutely solid and legendary and guaranteed to keep its value, that's the one to go with, the M3. And there were two kinds. There was a double stroke. The first ones they made, you had to stroke two short strokes because when Leica made it, they were worried that since they hadn't put a stroke lever on in advance before in any of their Barnack Leicas, they thought it would rip the film if you went too quickly. So they were slowing you down with a double stroke. This one has a single stroke, so it goes all the way around for one stroke to advance the film. And later it became an issue where they realized it wasn't an issue at all. And I would advance it, except for there's film in my cameras. It's very difficult for me to do shows without having cameras, but my cameras typically have film in them. You rarely see me pushing and advancing film, and that's why. It's because you ever want to check and see if there's film in a camera and you can't see in the back, just turn the rewind lever. If the rewind lever doesn't turn, which that one doesn't, that means that the tension is holding that from turning backwards, which means there's film in the camera. And it's on picture number 11, so I can't easily just burn film. If I were just a Leica salesman, I could just shoot this all day long and show it to you. If I were a Leica collector, that's what you do. You just play with them and you just listen and feel them. But I'm a Leica shooter. This is a camera that I take out on a regular basis. All my cameras typically have film in different levels of advancement. All my cameras typically are in progress. I've taken film out of Leicas that had pictures on them from 2 years ago because I cycle through different cameras based on what I feel like using. I think it was Eggleston who had multiple Leicas, and somebody said, "Why do you have more than one?" And he said, That way I can choose the one I feel like shooting that day. And that happens. Some days I take out the M5 because I just want that big grip. And I'm going to shoot portraits at a party. Sometimes I take out the little 3F because I can put it in my pocket. Sometimes I take the M2 because I want that 35mm frame line. And sometimes I take this because I want the 51.5 for low light. It's plenty sharp. If you can find one of those at a bargain and it's got a clean glass front element and back element, everything looks good, that's fine. It's perfectly good. And it'll save you a lot of money over the Summilux. It's my go-to. All right, that's today's photography talk. The mighty Leica M3. It's legendary. Hey, if you're enjoying these, hit the subscribe button and I'll be back next week. We'll talk more Leicas. As always, here's the good light.